Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Hearthstone Major at PAX East, presented by One Nation of Gamers. I am TJ, and I'm joined by That's Admirable. We're about to jump into the second match of the day. It is going to be Firebat taking on Amnesiac. And this match is going to be crazy. This is a round of 16 match, so winner moves on to that round of 8 to join Super JJ. What do you think of these players, Admirable?
Well, good friends of both these guys, good people, and hard workers. And that's really, to me, part of the most important thing you see among a lot of top Hearthstone players is the guys who are working the hardest are the ones who are bringing home tournament wins. Firebat in 2014 was undoubtedly the hardest working guy that year in tournaments. Ended up winning the World Championships. I think for North American Championships here in 2016, the competition got a little bit harder. A lot of people stepped their game. A lot of people worked hard at this, but Amnesia was amongst the people who were working the hardest. And that was a very heavy contributor to his win, is the fact that he understood his field, he prepared really well, brought the right lineup for the field he had to play against. And really looking forward to what he can bring to the Hearthstone scene. I mean, this is a very young guy. He's 15 years old, I believe. What a fantastic performance to be at such a young age to be winning a championship and then also having all that time in front of you to continue to build that resume. A lot of things in his future that he could work towards. And being such a young guy, a lot of different directions he could end up taking with that. So excited to see what he brings in Firebat. I mean, probably just my vote for Player of the Year in 2014, and I think likely in 2015 as well. Just continue to put a big performance. Was first player to win back-to-back offline lands. Had over $200,000 in cashes leading up to this point. What a career he's had as a young guy as well. I mean, he was, I think it was 19 when he won the World Championships.
Mm-hmm.
Woo!
Yeah.
He's young.
Yeah, and like you said, plenty of room still left in their Hearthstone careers to do what they wish. Both have high-profile wins, which means probably won't be feeling pressure or nerves coming into a situation like this. Again, it's just a round of 16, and making it to the round of 8 does secure Hearthstone Championship Tour points. And I know Amnesiac does not really need Hearthstone Championship Tour points, since I think he got about 35 or something ridiculous like that for winning the America's Winter Championship. But still, that prize money, just being able to brag that, hey guys, I have 1 million Hearthstone Championship Tour points is always gonna be something cool to do. Looking at their deck lineups, very similar lineups. Both of them have Rogue, and we talked about it a little bit before the last matchup. Rogue seems to be a very popular choice for some of these more known and more well-practiced players. Some of these sort of pro players or competitive Hearthstone players tend to be bringing Rogue a little bit more. Again, why do you think that is, Admiral? Why do you think we're seeing so many of these players, these more known players, bring the Rogue as a deck choice in this Open?
Well, just a lot of the players that we've been seeing run it, in addition to being one of their comfort classes, I think that versus an open field, you want something that's a little bit more well-rounded and that can kind of adapt its game plan to what's going on. When you're playing against a lot of unknown players, it's pretty tough to predict exactly what they're going to bring. It's not like the 16-person invitationals where it's a lot of very top players in the world. You understand their styles and how they think about the game because you practice with them very often, and as a result, you can kind of mold your strategies to tackle what you expect them to do. This event, it's kind of all bets off. I mean, we've seen a Reno Warrior versus Reno Hunter match, which is actually one of the most legendary matches that I've ever seen take place at this event. But that's the kind of thing you'll get in open tournaments. People will just bring their favorite decks because they're their favorite decks. There's not really a strategic measure behind it other than they've practiced this and they're comfortable with it. And so because of that, this deck is going to flex a little bit better than some of your other choices might. And kind of the same thing with Freeze Mage. In that same manner, it can flex a little bit more than you would anticipate with maybe a choice like Secret Paladin. And these players are going to rely on their decision-making to get their edge. And so that's pretty much, I would say, the biggest reason to bring a deck like Rogue or Freeze Mage to an event like this.
Yeah, I'd say so. And we'll see. Firebat, so far we've seen him play on stream a few times, and both times his Priest has been banned because he's been going up against decks where it counters. I wonder what Amnesiac's going to go with the ban. We're still waiting for the players to just sit down and get ready for their matchup. Of course, these matches are taking place live from the PAX East floor at the GEICO gaming booth. So if you are at PAX East, make sure you head over there and you can watch the matches live You can get some stuff signed by all the players. There's also players there from Team Liquid, Cloud9, Archon. Brainerd was there earlier in the week. I don't know if he's still there, but you might be able to catch him if you head over there. But also, ONOG has created an app where you can actually play against other players at PAX East. So if you're at PAX East and want to play against some other players in Hearthstone and have a chance to win some prizes, some cool Razor gear, some cash prizes, go ahead and on your app store search for the Battlezone Beta app by ONOG. When you download that app and register, it'll actually enter your Battlezone ID. It'll actually search, I believe, the PAX East Wi-Fi for other players that are using the app. And you play Hearthstone against them, and you ladder up. And at the end of the day, the past couple days, we've been giving away lots of prizes to the players that have been at the top of that ladder, that leaderboard of that ladder. So make sure you go ahead and do that because that's a pretty cool way to have a chance to sort of simulate a tournament experience because you're laddering up, you're playing against other players, and you're winning stuff. And also, it's just a fun way to get connected with some people there at the PAX environment. And hopefully that app will continue to grow over the course of the next couple tournaments because I think that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, really happy to see ONOG really working and GEICO really working to push this sort of traditional card game environment that I had growing up. That was one of the appeals to cards to me, was just the social environment and meeting people who were like-minded that shared a passion of mine. And with Hearthstone, a lot of it's been online play so far. And so in order to do that, I had to, I've gone to some pretty great lengths to meet like-minded people. Added tons and tons of people. I played on ladder and tried to start conversations and build networks with these individuals. Where in real life cards, it was you showed up at the card store, you battled someone, and you talked during the game. That doesn't really happen right now. So to see the tournament scene supported in sort of a more social environment, that's something I'm really happy about, and I think is needed in this space.
Yeah, and both of us, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. We had a chance to compete at the one of the opens that ONOG ran at the beginning of their circuit in 2016, which was actually at PAX South in Texas. And you made it a little bit further than I did, but we both made it pretty far. You ended up winning a little bit of cash for that open, but that was one of the first live tournament experiences I've had. I play in a lot of opens online, but a lot of times when I go to a tournament in person, I'm usually casting and don't get that experience to play. But it's really great. It's lots of fun. So if you guys have a chance to ever go to one of these events, then make sure you head over and sign up. I know at least ONOG will be at PAX Prime because we'll be running our grand finals there. So definitely check it out if they're running some more opens. And also, the 2016 circuit is still going on. So if you guys want to sign up for it, you can head over to geico.onog.gg and sign up for the tournament. The next open is on April 30th. Even after that open, there's still 5 more between now and August. And of course, all those tournaments lead into the features, and those features lead into the grand finals that are at PAX Prime. So if you want that chance to sort of get started in tournaments, have a chance to win some money, win some prize pool, and get that tournament experience, then make sure you head over there, sign up. But we do have the bans in from these players, finally almost ready to jump into the match. It is going to be mage banned from both sides.
Yep, finally these players have decided what they wanted to ban. As much as I would love to sit here and listen to me talk to myself for another 10 hours today, I do want to see the matches. So we've got them seated. Yeah. They're in deck selection at the moment, and as soon as these guys get underway, we'll jump into game. They are not waiting on us. We are waiting on them. But yeah, mage being banned from both sides, I don't really see this as a problem. Amnesia, I think, can oftentimes anticipate his warrior getting banned. I think he's also playing patron, if I remember. And Firebat is playing. I mean, I can't imagine this guy not playing patron if it's available. He's so good with the deck, and seeing exactly how he can get this going. Yeah, mage ban just makes sense, I think, against both these lineups. The rogues don't want to face him. The priest certainly doesn't want to face it. I don't think Amnesia's warlock would want to face it. And being at patron warrior, it's not quite the same matchup that Control Warrior has against this, where they have shield blocks, shield maidens, and they can use Justicar to turn it into tank up instead of armor up. Those are big influencers for why Control Warrior beats Freeze Mage. Patrons simply got access to 2 armor smiths. Yeah,
which can sometimes be pretty scary, but usually not effective enough to push you over the edge. But we speculate a little bit what kind of priest it is from Firebat, but probably just a standard control priest. I mean, we haven't really seen too much crazy stuff from priest. We did see some Dragon Priest early on in the tournament, But as far as Firebat goes, I've been seeing some tweets from him in the last couple weeks, sort of hinting about, not hinting, but sort of letting me know that he's been playing some Control Priest and like the super control style with Elite Starseeker. So that's what I'm expecting from him. But other than that, this series should be a pretty good one. A little bit unfortunate that these players had to meet, but with so many popular players entering into this tournament, it was bound to happen sooner or later. We had a long list of players that were casualties in the Hearthstone Major at PAX East. We saw Trump fall yesterday. We saw Strife Crow fall yesterday. We saw Maz fall. Zalay went down. There was just so many players that we expected to make it pretty far in the tournament that fell out actually quite early.
Yeah, finally we're getting underway here. These guys have selected a deck, and we're going to jump straight into it. You know, you say unfortunately they meet. This is the one of the matchups I'm looking forward to here.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it looks like we're going to go into Rogue versus Priest to start off. Now, classically, Oil Rogue has been considered to be really a strong matchup against Priest, but it's gotten a lot closer in recent times with some of the inclusions that Priest has been going with. So, still a close matchup, not as one-sided as it once was.
Yeah, I'm curious exactly what Firebat's build is going to be. I mean, the fact that he's playing Priest at all is kind of shocking to me. I mean, I've seen him joke around with like Freeze Priest on his stream before. I don't think I've ever heard Firebat suggest Priest in a tournament setting.
When you play Hearthstone at a competitive level for as long as Firebat has, sometimes you just got to play something to change things up. Sometimes you just play decks in tournaments so much that you just get flat out bored of them. And I think Firebat suffers, but goes through that sometimes, where he's like, you know what, I really don't feel like bringing Zoo Warlock and Druid to this tournament. I feel like playing some Priest.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a thought Firebat has. I really don't know.
Either that, or he thinks just Priest is going to be good against the field.
That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Like, maybe the average opponent he expects to face may not be playing quite as aggressively as some of his practice opponents, and as a result, he could take advantage of that by playing a lot more long-term plan. Maybe he just expects a lot of Control Warrior to show up. You know, both of those could be great influencers for Priest.
Yeah.
It's going to be Blood Mage Backstab here. Good answer to the Acolyte.
Gonna give him one draw. But Priest can definitely suffer from being incredibly inconsistent. Priest, even more so than Patron, has a lot of cards that do absolutely nothing by themselves. And we can see some of those cards in the hand right now. Circle of Healing, Flash Heal, even Shadow Word Death sometimes can do absolutely nothing by itself. Like in this matchup especially, what are you going to Shadow Word Death?
6/6 Edwin Van Cleef, that's about it. Like maybe a Dr. Boob.
And oiled up Azure Drake. Ooh, oiled up Azure Drake. That was a poor choice of.
No, it was not. It was not. There's no one who's going to take that the wrong way. It's going to be Coin Deadly Poison and take out this Northshire Cleric for Amnesia. 8 cards in hand for him. Firebat, as you mentioned, just operating on sort of a weirder hand. He does have a second Acolyte here, and this Zombie Child remains uncontested for the moment. And he does have a copy of Entomb. You know, if he picks up an Auchenized Soul Priest, this hand's actually looking pretty good.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's like his deck feels like it's just going to draw cards. And he looks at his hand. Maybe Acolyte of Pain isn't even the play here. I mean, I could see Deathlord being totally fine as well, just to try to protect your Zombie Chow from something SI7 agent and then attack with a dagger. And even going to heal up to avoid giving away the information to Amnesiac that Frost Giant is in fact not in his deck.
Yeah, basically Firebat's strategy in this matchup, in all matchups with Priest, and the reason why he plays so many draw cards like double Acolyte of Pain, is he just hard cycles into Elite Starseeker and then turns his whole deck into legendaries. That's what he does. He won't hesitate at all to just get legendaries. Become legendary even.
Firebat is a very aggressive player who likes to drive the action.
Also likes legendaries.
Yeah, that too. Round of 16 update. Astrogation has defeated Atlantic. Meanwhile, Ultima has taken out Richard. So both of those players also moving on to the top 8. As we bring you the rest of these matches, Ultima is the player who actually upset Amaz yesterday on stream. So
the crazy hunter deck that it was like beast synergy with dread scale, which was nuts. So cool to see him move on. Looking forward to seeing him and Astrogation in the round of 8 later on in the day. This is one of those hands that I was talking about. What do you do? Entomb. I mean, you're not going to really find a better Entomb target than probably an Azure Drake. Maybe he feels like Violet Teacher also. But he can also go ahead and Light Bomb here, because Light Bomb's not going to find much use against Rogue either.
Yeah, I think Light Bomb tends to be the best choice here, simply because it's probably the least flexible card in your hand.
This is a good Entomb target.
Yeah, I think any time that you can Entomb something that you will actually find use from, it's very different than like Entombing an Azure Drake, which just doesn't really do much for your deck, or like Entombing a Violet Teacher, where you're like, what am I going to make a bunch of 1/1s? One at a time over the course of 6 turns.
Velen's chosen an Azure Drake, all of a sudden, Holy Nova's a Flame Strike that heals everything.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Amnesia, just gonna go ahead and Southsea Deckhand here, Tinker Sharp Sword, Oil, and after the dagger up, clear out the Zombie Chow and start smacking away.
Yep.
That's a Shadow Word Death target.
It is. I didn't expect this to be one, but that is definitely a Shadow Word Death target. Velen's Chosen. Double Velen's Chosen and only 1 minion in hand to be able to use it on. And you really don't want a Velen's Chosen preemptively, just because of the possibility of sap in Rogue. So, not looking too good for Firebat at the moment. He's going to have some pretty crucial draws. The thing is, though, like we said, Priest has gotten a lot closer to Rogue in this scenario. They have a lot more annoying stuff that you have to deal with early on, and sometimes that can make it a little bit harder for you to piece together enough damage later to kill them, especially with Justicar Trueheart. If that's in Firebat's deck, you can get further and further out of range of their damage, and maybe just be able to sort of fatigue them out of the game as long as you have enough removal to never let them have something stick on the board.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you watch Firebat play, and the contrast it is against a player like Trump or Colento, where Firebat basically just plays the thing in his hand every single time, and Colento and Trump are looking to try to be basically as conservative as they can every single time. The fact that they have wildly different play styles and are both winning players is so strange to me that could be the case.
Yeah, it's incredibly interesting, because a lot of players have said that Hearthstone is a game that's sort of been figured out by the highest level of players. But the argument against that is that you look at Firebat and Stripecrow and Colento, who are all teammates. They're all on the same exact team, and they all have completely different play styles, individual to one another, and they all win at Hearthstone. It's like, well, obviously it might have been figured out, but figured out in different ways by different players across the competitive scene. It's cool to see.
They figured it out, TJ.
It's been figured out. Wild Growth on turn 2. I piloted Shredder on turn 3. Figured out.
Yep. Don't need to practice with Druid. It gets good draws sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I need to prepare for the situations where I don't have the world's best draw.
Mm-hmm. Those are the games you just concede and still win 60% of the time.
Sap for Amnesia on this 5/5 Wild Paramancer's got to feel good with this Violet Apprentice ticket. And after that sprint, he's got all the gas in the world. This is why this is a bad matchup, by the way. Priest kind of goes thing, sprint, and then the Rogue goes sprint, and then that 1-for-1 exchange is no longer the case.
Yeah.
More updates from the round of 16 bracket. Ivy beat Markadag, and Ivy actually was the player who upset Trump yesterday in the later stages of that day as well. So him moving on. Both the both the underdogs from yesterday's broadcast matches going pretty deep in this event. Both top 8 now.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive stuff. And so far, we got a pretty stacked top 8, and I'm looking forward to it. And either of these players that we're watching right now, if they make it in, just sort of increases that fact. And yeah, Firebat. Remember how I said there's a lot of cards in Priest that don't do anything by themselves, and I pointed out 2 cards specifically that were in Firebat's opening hand? Circle of Healing and Flash Heal.
Oh no, those are great healing cards
That are still there. 12 turns later.
Anything.
Yeah. If only he had entombed that Azure Drake and left it around to Velen's Chosen.
Yeah, I think this is just a matchup that Firebat didn't anticipate facing.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, this is one of the worst ones, if not the worst one, that you could be fighting against. Does have a 10-mana Holy Nova that allows him to trade with Headwind Bankleaf, though, so not dead just yet. But it's getting closer.
I mean, is it possible for Firebat to just run Amnesiac out of damage? In this matchup, as a rogue, you can't just throw out your cards. You do have to be pretty efficient with your damage because you can end up running out. Like if you use your Blade Flurries too liberally, if you don't fit into your attacks, if you don't use a weapon buff on a 1 durability weapon, those types of things can add up against you. Because Priest can make it so that you rarely have a minion stick. This is sort of one of the different cases where Firebat just didn't draw activators for these sort of dead cards, but sometimes that can happen. But I don't think Amnesiac's going to run out of damage in this game. He's got plenty already just in his hand. There's Justicar. Hello.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, I think this damage just added up to a bit much this game. Does have Flash Heal to keep himself at 21 this turn. I mean, I'm trying to think of like a string of miracle draws here that keeps Firebat in the game. And I'm not really seeing it.
I mean, is this just lethal this turn? Again,
I count 18 damage.
Okay.
A little bit off. I guess you could... No, I count 18 damage. Doesn't quite have lethal this turn, but certainly can just make good progress. Keep drawing. Oh, Amnesia's actually almost out of cards. That's really important to note, actually. That Justicar might have been super timely. Like, say Firebat rips...
Light Bomb?
I was thinking Light Bomb, and... Yeah, no, I'm trying to... Nah, I can't think of it. I was like, maybe Akanai, but Akanai would shut out his healing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to do it. Firebat's going to fall in this game. Priest versus Rogue is just really unfun for the Priest.
But you could see there what I mean by can the Rogue run out of damage. There was 1 card left in Amnesiac's deck. I mean, he did have a finite amount of damage left in his hand. You do have to spend lots of removal early on you have to use deadly poisons to kill Acolytes of Pain, which aren't threatening, but the long-term plan of the Priest is what's threatening to you, and you can't let them get there quicker by having Acolyte of Pains get multiple draws. So there is chances where the Rogue can run out of damage, and that's why the matchup has sort of gotten closer, but still definitely Rogue favored. That's why we see Amnesiac taking the win. And now we're going to move into what appears to be a Zoo Warlock versus Firebat's Priest once again.
Yeah, Unstable Ghoul in this deck honestly is really interesting, because it's just kind of like a 1/3 taunt that whirlwinds. Remember really early on, when Goblins vs. Gnomes came out, like I built something that was kind of similar to this, where I just kind of played a bunch of taunts and stalled out and tried to draw a bunch of cards. And I found that in most games, I did a pretty good job of stalling out the board and drawing a bunch of cards, but everyone just kind of ran me over. But now the format's kind of gone a different direction where everything's really, really focused in on the early game, or kind of has like a long-term combo-ish damage mid-range plan.
Yeah.
So this choice feels like it's really good versus a lot of the aggro builds that are out there. I mean, even Zoo, just You kind of just blow their stuff up, play a bunch of taunts, draw a bunch of cards, and then against the control decks, your game plan is to turbo to Elise and make a bunch of legendaries and try to kill them.
It's funny. I like the way you explain Unstable Ghoul. Just a 1/3 taunt that whirlwinds. That is exactly what it is. Zombie Chow, just a 2/3 that heals your opponent for 5 when it dies.
You get what I'm saying. The point is, it doesn't really do anything in this deck. Like, in Grim Patron, it's like, it's propagating your patrons over and over again. I have never seen it used. I have never seen it used in a deck outside of Grim Patron. And, not really effectively anyway.
Well, it was used in Shrevecrow's Grinder Mage, but I think every card in the game at some point has been used in Shrevecrow's Grinder Mage. So that doesn't really have much merit as far as we're concerned.
I do recall the Leper Gnome duplicate win condition with Lore Walker Cho. You'd force your opponent to duplicate with Lore Walker Cho by playing duplicate and filling up their hand. And the only way for them to empty their hand was by playing duplicate. So you got your duplicate back, and then you could duplicate more Leper Gnomes.
Yep. Shrevecrow did that for 8 hours.
Yep. He's been known for it since the beginning.
Yep. Well, Firebat had a lot better of a hand this time. He's got Elise and Justicar in his opening hand, which isn't as great against these faster decks like Zoo, but he also has Alkanized Circle of Healing. He's got the activators for those cards last game that were stuck in his hand all game long. And looking pretty good now. And Amnesiac does pick up Implosion off the top, which is going to allow him to deal with this. But rolls a 2.
Not really what he's looking for. More updates from round of 16 bracket. Ray C from Vicious Syndicate able to take out Kesjo in that match. So another player shaping up this top 8 bracket.
Yeah, and Ray C actually has a wealth of card game experience even prior to Hearthstone. So he's no stranger to these open type formats. So he actually, I think Ray C actually grew up like right next to Brian Kibler. They were neighbors.
Yeah.
When they were younger, so he's sort of the young Padawan to Brian Kibler.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with Ray very recently, and he's a very bright guy who's very determined, really ambitious, and he's the kind of person who has the attitude that it takes to really be successful at card games. And while he hasn't had like the insane performances in Hearthstone yet, he's been very consistently placing at top ranks of the ladder. He's been doing really well in the open events that he's been competing in. And kind of one of those players where I think about it, and it seems like it's only a matter of time till he starts stringing together a bunch of really big wins and making a name for himself.
This could be the tournament where it starts. So looking forward to seeing him later on in the round of 8 to play as well. We'll have to get his opponent, who he's going to be facing as soon as we get that update. But as of now, Firebat's still just chugging along with this Priest, cycling through that deck. And Amnesiac's starting to run out of stuff. He does have Dr. Boom coming up, though. But it's plenty of options for Firebat. You can Entomb it. You can Shadow Word Death it. Hell, you can even ignore it.
That's always the best option. Just take 7. Yeah, pretty easy turn for Amnesia here. I mean, it doesn't get much easier than this one. Oh! That could be pretty significant the next turn or two.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is a pretty good Entomb target. But maybe he wants to couple it with something, like say that Entombing is good here, but he wants to use Northshire Cleric. That would be a reason to use Shadow or Death. But speaking strictly from a value perspective, this is a really easy turn to Entomb because you're not under a ton of pressure. And you also get a Dr. Boom in your deck, so now you have a great draw afterwards as well. So I think it just makes the most sense to go ahead and rip that this turn.
Yeah. All right, well, Amnesiac does have some decent cards in his deck. And Handsome Mechano can do a lot of work against Priest. If you can build up a decent-sized board playing a Handsome Mechano, you can do a lot of damage from nowhere. Coupled with a Power Overwhelming or 2 and some Wind Furies, oh, baby.
The way Chalky's always beat me is an Handsome Mechano, double Power Overwhelming Abusive Sergeant, the minion that got Wind Fury.
Deal 35 damage that turn. Well, Amnesiac's going to load up the board here, so he's going to set up for an Enhancer Mechano and going to hope that Firebat doesn't have an answer to this, but he's got a great answer in Holy Nova Shadow Word Death. We'll see if he's going to find a better play for it, but I'm not sure. Maybe he feels like he doesn't need to Holy Nova yet. It does have quite a bit of value, but he is going to go for it. And it's going to hope his Elise survives, and it does.
Yeah, if you thought there was any other play Firebat was going for other than Holy Nova, once that Shadow Word Death was used, you've not watched too much Firebat. Play the best card. Out. Play the best card in my hand.
Use my mana, play my cards.
It's a very Firebat thing to do. I think it's wonderful to watch personally.
Yeah.
Because it's such a simple approach to the game. Just play my thing. My thing is good.
Welcome to the Grand Tournament, champion.
Curious if he wants to actually use his Northshire Cleric, or if he's interested in healing himself, or just the Elise without the Northshire Cleric. This is kind of interesting. A rare spot where Firebat doesn't just play his card and make something happen. At this point, he may be thinking that he doesn't need to do anything and can just kind of wait until he can get a bigger turn with like Circle of Healing and Northshire Cleric.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Because he might be worried about his Northshire Cleric getting killed, but you're happy to see it killed because that means your other minions are surviving. You're happy if he trades into it. He's so close to dead. It's like how much time are you gonna have to draw into that stuff? Well, I don't know. It's a weird decision, but no taunts.
And that's a lot of Divine Shields.
His Nerubian egg got Wind Fury. That thing's blazing fast.
Is someone injured?
Yeah, Firebat. I think he had something in mind with his Northshire Cleric. I think that's why he played it this way.
Yeah. I mean, this is exactly the same amount of cards that he would have drawn last turn.
Oh,
but no, maybe he can flash heal and clear off some stuff. But ooh, Power Word Shield. This is going to be it's not going to be a board clear, but it's going to be pretty darn close.
Too great. I'm guessing he trades and then flash heals here.
Yeah.
Maybe you're putting a 4/4 that way, but you've kind of run them out of resources at that point. Yeah, he's just gonna go dome and just pass.
Yeah,
Nope.
he does want to make sure that he takes out the Lotheb though, but he's gonna put.
Ooh, that is lethal next turn. If Amnesia can't piece together 20 damage extra from what's on board, he is done like dinner.
4, 8, 12. Nope, not 20.
Voidwalker, perfect.
That's exactly what he needed. But that's going to be Firebat tying the series up 1-1 with that Auchenai Soul Priest plus the hero power. And that Priest doing some work this game. Suffered a little bit last game, maybe from inconsistency of draw and in a poor matchup. But showcasing the strength of the deck against some of the faster strategies in this match.
Yeah, I mean, seeing this Priest build in action, like with 2 copies of Unstable Gold, 2 copies of Zombie Chow, and the Wild Pyromancers in here, this deck is clearly aimed at the more aggressive builds I think he was anticipating. And that says a lot about his lineup, too, with the Patron Warrior doing the same thing, with the Rogue doing the same thing, and with the Mage doing the same thing. He's kind of come with a lineup that's really, really aimed at Zoo and at Secret Paladin. And with that in mind, I think his goal is totally fine. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons he's been so successful this tournament is almost every single lineup will run one of those 2 decks.
And against Amnesiac, who has a Zoo Warlock, Firebat just might make it impossible for Amnesiac to find a win with this deck. He's going to go into Patron Warrior, which is another great matchup for him, going up against Zoo. And then also the Rogue is going to be a great matchup too. Rogue would probably be his weakest, and I think that's why he's throwing it to last. But Rogue can do one good Blade Flurry, can completely just win you the game in that matchup. So Firebat starts off with Whirlwind plus Patron, needs a weapon in order to make this hand pretty good.
Yeah, it does have a copy of Slam in hand to draw cards. Meanwhile, Amnesia operating on Flame Imp, Abuse Sergeant, Haunted Creeper, Nerubian Egg newly picked up, and Defender of Argus. So it's going to be a bit of a race here. It does pick up Frowling Berserker, which is a welcome draw, I think, with Battle Rage in your hand. Slam going to take out the Flame Imp nicely. We're going to see what the Amnesia answers with. And Nerubian Egg certainly would be the most threatening one to Firebat. And now that he's picked up Power Overwhelming, that is certainly the direction he's going to go with. So Firebat may actually have Frowling Berserker off the menu after seeing Nerubian Egg hit play.
There's also some merit here to Haunted Creeper because Haunted Creeper becomes a liability as the game goes on. You want to get those Haunted Creepers value before Grim Patrons are played. You want to sort of force out also resources, especially Whirlwind resources, to get rid of those Haunted Creepers. So I don't mind this. I like the Haunted Creeper over the Nerubian Egg.
My only issue here is that now the Frowling Berserker becomes such a strong play versus you, where if you played the Nerubian Egg, the Frowling Berserker becomes almost a liability against you.
Yeah.
And that's something I think that Amnesia is. It's like he may be overthinking this situation. Like I'm not sure how experienced he is with Zoo. I know he's played a lot of Reno Warlock and tends to play more of like the control combo style decks. My personal sense is Nerubian Egg's the best card in Zoo. So you play Nerubian Egg, couple it with Power Overwhelming, and that's where you get your big lead from.
Yeah.
Here he's kind of like he's playing around stuff better, but what does playing that around stuff actually mean for him? And that's sort of my concern with it, is I'm not sure it means that much.
Yeah, well, he's going to play it now. It's a little bit weird, but again, maybe just thinking that these spiders might not be what he wants on the board once patrons start to hit.
Firebat just going to go Armor Smith and Armor Up here.
I'm a little bit. I might have liked to see no armor up there to try and get more value out of Battle Rage, but that really is sort of a dead giveaway that you have Battle Rage, because it's likely that these two spiders are just going to hit you in the face, unless he wants to spend another Power Overwhelming or an Abusive Sergeant to kill it off, unless you think he has another activator in his hand. But Defender of Argus is probably going to, I don't know, see? I guess it doesn't matter.
I think it's fine to armor up, and I think he should be armoring up more, personally, because the one thing you need with this deck is time. Like, so very often you find yourself in a situation where you can handle most of the board presence, but what ends up happening is, as the game continues to go on, the Zoo player can rebuild at a lot of different stages, and if you don't have enough life, and quite literally, I'm like down to like the single point of life at times, you can't make the recovery. So just taking what you can get, I think, pans out a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And this situation's a little bit awkward now because if Firebat plays Unstable Ghoul, the Nerubian Egg is going to get a point of damage on it, which means if he goes to Grim Patron Whirlwind, the Nerubian Egg is going to activate at that point. So this could have been part of Amnesia's thinking too, is that through 2 Whirlwinds, which will kind of inevitably come along at some point, I'll get a free 4/4.
Ho! Just throw
honestly.
out the patron with a board full of 2 attack minions. This is actually I'd say pretty solid play. Amnesiac does have ways to deal with it, but Firebat's already seen a Power Overwhelming. He's already seen an Abusive Sergeant and a Defender of Argus. He's thinking, how likely is it that he has an activator? Or number 2, do I even have a better play besides just throwing out the Patriot and forcing him to deal with it? Which at the moment he doesn't, because of the reasons you mentioned. Unstable Ghoul becomes a much less enticing play.
Yeah. And even if he sees Ironbeak Owl, it means that something's going to have to happen to either take out the Patron, less to get value, or it's going to make Whirlwinds better. So this play from Firebat, I think, actually panned out good in a couple different ways for him. And that Piloted Shredder draw might have been what he needed to really start solidifying his board this game. That felt like a really important draw. And the question here is he going to go for Unstable Ghoul, or is he just going to armor up? And it looks like armor up.
Yeah. He seems to be on that sort of game plan, and Piloted Shredder also just buys him time. His hand becomes so much better if he picks up a Death Spite. Even just a weapon in general. Fire War Axe would make his hand a lot better because he can start fighting back on board. But that's a big enhancement, Meccano. Only 1 Wind Fury, and that's going to be on the Knife Juggler. But he does get some Divine Shield. He gets taunts on some of the minions that he's probably happy to get taunts on. Maybe not the Voidwalker. Probably like to see anything else.
Yeah, this is going to be a bit tough. I mean, Firebat needing... If he had one more mana, this would be such a good turn. Be able to Whirlwind, drop the Unstable Goal, or Patron Whirlwind, drop the Unstable Goal would just be so strong.
Yeah. Especially now that he's seeing the Iron Beak Owl, there'd be no way for Amnesiac to push through. But this turn he can go with Battle Rage. He can, hit in Battle Rage and evaluate. He could also play the Frothing Berserker first, but Frothing Berserker doesn't do much on this board, and I think he wants to have mana if he does go with Battle Rage to play a weapon if he picks it up. Because he wouldn't have enough mana to play Death Spite if he picks it up after drawing the Frothing Berserker.
Ooh.
Inner Rage.
Yeah, Acolyte and Unstable Goal is definitely going to be a good play here. But that Inner Rage pickup, Firebat's looking like he might have something to swing this board. Now his life total is getting a little bit low. And Amnesia is now on the life tap turns where it's 2 cards a turn from here on out. Oh, 3, 6. Wait a minute. 14,
Keep in mind
15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. That's just lethal with the Wind Fury.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, Amnesiac's going to sort of steal a win here from under Firebat's nose. And no weapons in the early hand. That just happens sometimes, and that's plenty of damage for Firebat. You can see his eyebrows just go up a little bit. He's like, well, sometimes that happens.
Wow. That Leroy draw. That's part of the reason why Enhancement Meccano is in here too, is just to create these kind of board swings. And then furthermore, that's kind of what I'm talking about with the pressure. If you can't handle everything in the couple of early turns, the Zoo can piece together a lot of damage to just go ahead and push. The Grim Patron's looking for a big swing turn. It needs a little bit of extra time to get that swing turn versus Zoo, unless you just draw an early Death Spite. Firebat didn't have a weapon in that early game and got steamrolled in that one. So he's got Rogue and Warrior to go against the Patron of Amnesia. It's game number 4, match point for the America's Winter Champion.
This matchup could come down to a Patron Warrior mirror, which would be sort of an anticlimactic way to end the match. But Firebat's still got to get through this game with the Rogue. Still got to find a win with the Rogue. This matchup's a little bit interesting. The Rogue can just sort of run the Patron Warrior out of stuff, but the Rogue can also run out of damage themselves. So it's a pretty intricate matchup that relies on not overloading with resources and making good reads as to what type of cards your opponent has, especially on the Patron Warrior side. How ham can I go with patrons?
Well, you can go really ham if you get the old Death Spite Inner Rage Grim Patron draw with Armor Smith and Unstable Gold back behind it. Firebat's got 2 copies of SI7 Agent Sap, Violet Teacher, Sprint, Tinker Sharp Soil, and Fan of Knives to work with. Very low on board impact. It seems like, needs a couple of spells to really get this done. And Amnesia is just going to Death Spite this down and then,
oh man,
I think likely move into a Patron turn. Now the Patron turn does risk Blade Flurry, so that's something we're going to see on Amnesia's radar, is how much he's worried about that. But
I feel like you can't really be worried about it. It's going to be the earliest that after seeing the Tinker Sharp Soil, that there's at least a weapon buff. So maybe you're a little bit hesitant now. If you hadn't seen a weapon buff, if Firebat had developed a minion, then I think that's your sort of your go pass to go for it. We'll see how brave he's feeling, and he decides to go for the Paladin Treasure, so not wanting to go for it yet. But eventually, you're gonna have to make patrons, because you're not gonna win without using patrons. Half the cards in your deck are there because you have patrons, and so he's going to need to do it eventually. But for right now, Amnesiac's going to hold off, maybe try and get Firebat to expend that second charge of the Tinker Sharp Sword Oil Dagger before he goes and starts making a big patron turn.
Yeah. Gets SI7 Agent set, I think, likely to deal with the front half of Pilot Shredder here. Second Armor Smith and go. Ooh. How good is Edwin Van Cleef here? This is really going to depend on the Pilot Shredder drop. I'd really hate to have a game boil down to that, but it's going to be so important what comes out of that. Looks like Firebat's got other plans in mind too. It looks like he's going to eye the armor smith before the piloted shredder here. So Fan of Knives give Amnesia the armor, and card advantage seems to be like what's going to be the battle in his mind. Picks up Blade Flurry, super important card for him right now.
And this turn might give Amnesiac the go-ahead to play Patrons, because he made like a sort of an awkward turn where Blade Flurry might have done some good, but he also knows that Firebat's a smart player who, even if he had Blade Flurry, might hold on to it with the Deathbite charge. But what else are you going to do with this hand? You can sort of just clear the board, hold on to your patience, because you do have a second Deathbite. But all right, yep, he's that last turn sort of gave him the green light.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think this is the time to go for it. Just the fact that he's drawn more utility afterwards kind of ties his hands a little bit more than it normally would have, I think. And yeah. Firebat is... Whew! This is going to be bad news for Amnesia.
Yeah, he actually held on to the Inner Rage and also held on to the Whirlwind. And he didn't play fully for the board. He actually attacked face with both his Deathbite and his SI-7 agent. So this is sort of just a play to sort of get the Blade Flurry out, and he's still holding on to his resources. Firebat is also just at 16 health. So Amnesiac is in a situation where he could just draw into Grom and win the game over 2 turns.
I believe that's his real game plan right now. And with the execute scene, this 6/6 Van Cleave is also looming a bit too. So Deathbite going to go face. Amnesia knows his outs at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's considering the Whirlwind before the Dread Corsair, I think.
Whirlwind does save you some damage this turn. You do kill it off with the Deathbite Whirlwind, but you're not 100% sure that you're even going to go with the attack with that second charge of Deathbite next turn, because your plan to go face is only as good as you having the burn to back it up behind it. And right now he just doesn't. He doesn't have the Grom. He holds onto the Dread Corsair because that sort of unlocks Battle Rage as well.
Yep.
And it also would have just sort of traded in for free. So this pickup is... Whoa.
This is getting awfully close. Korokron Elite would be a good draw here as well. If he chooses to go with the attack on the Deathbite, Korokron Elite's also looking like a pretty good draw here too.
I don't even know if he plays it though.
Yeah, he's going to slow down here instead. Realizes that Grom is his best out for the win, so just going to slow things down, make sure that he cuts into Firebat's damage a little bit over the next couple turns, and hope that he can draw that Grom. I mean, it is pretty much looking for Grom or nothing at this point, though.
Yeah. Yeah, Amnesiac does play Piloted Shredders, which usually you only have room for one of the 4 drops. You either play double Piloted Shredder or double Korokron Elite. There are some players who mix and match. Play like 1 Piloted Shredder, 1 Korokron. Or some players play 2 Piloted Shredders, 1 Korokron, but it's a lot of times it's rare to see both of them in a deck.
So Amnesia's facing down 14 damage. Do you slam and draw a card, or do you just slam the 6/1? Because if he draws a card, the likelihood he dies is a little bit higher. But if he just slams the 6/1, he's not getting himself closer to Grom that way.
You can also just Inner Rage it.
If he Inner Rages, he is... yeah, I guess he could Inner Rage.
He still has lethal with Grom if he innervates.
Yep. Or
if he Inner Rages.
Yep. Just slam the Grom and attack for 10 and use the Fireworks.
And then you can decide what your draw is going to be. Now, evaluate next turn based on the board state if you have to use the slam for like sort of a last-ditch effort.
Now that being said, if he goes 3 to face the Fireworks, slams the Edwin Van Cleef, armors up, and draws Korokron Elite, then he would also have 6 from Korokron Elite and then 3 more from the Fire War Axe to end the game.
Yeah.
So now he doesn't have that Korokron Elite out, but he still does have the Grom out. But he's cutting the damage a little bit here. This is going to be really close. All right, going to sprint.
Yeah.
Still needs a lot of time to win.
Yeah, I think Amnesiac still has 2 more turns. Unless a lot of burn is picked up here, and that's not a lot of burn. Amnesiac still got 2 more turns to find something some type of out. And he's also on like a Death Spite draw to potentially win as well. Or sorry, another Fire War Axe draw to potentially win as well. Because if he slams Fifth with Fire War Axe, puts Firebat at 6, if he does have 2 more turns, oh no, he's not gonna. That wouldn't be doing it. Battle Rage.
I think you start Battle Raging. Like the Slam, I think has a much more flexibility than the Slam does, but he's gonna Slam anyway.
Frothing Berserker.
Belcher. He's buying time. He's just not really. I mean, that's good enough, I guess. I mean, if you buy time, it's kind of the same thing as making progress. But his question now is, if I kill the Lotheb, how much time does the Sludge Belcher buy me? Not very much via sap. This is tough.
Yeah, I think now it's pretty much over. He just doesn't have enough. He doesn't have enough time, and he doesn't have enough damage because his Grom out no longer exists. He doesn't have an activator. He gave up his Slam. He gave up his Inner Rage to try and remove the board. So now he doesn't have anything. And depending on where this lands, I think this is nope. Might have been a potential lethal with backstabs. If it had landed on one of the it would have been lethal.
It's still lethal.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, just attacks. Backstab attack, backstab again attack, and Blade Flurry. So Firebat actually pieces the damage this turn. We're going to game number 5. Woo doggy. This is close. Patron versus Patron. TJ, I know it's your favorite matchup in the world.
God, it is the worst.
What makes it the worst? I always thought Patron was a really tough deck to navigate.
It is a really tough deck to navigate, but the mirror matchup is incredibly linear. It feels. Now we'll definitely have to see. There are lots of there are some situations that these players can find themselves in, which make the decision making really hard, and that's if they both have perfect hands. The Patron matchup is the most interesting when both players have perfect hands, because there's a lot that goes into it. But when one player has a much better hand than the other, it's very one-sided, and it's almost impossible for the player that falls behind to come back. The reason being is because usually the first person to make patrons is the one to win, because patron warriors just don't have enough removal to make it happen. I said when both players have perfect hands, it makes it a little bit more interesting, because with a full board of patrons, a lot of times you can find room to remove some of your opponents and make more of your own. So it can be an interesting dynamic with 2 full boards. But other than that, you're specifically looking for just Death Bite early, Patron, Inner Rage, Whirlwinds early, and we'll see who can find those. If neither player finds those, it's all about the mid-range minions. And Amnesiac has, Death Bite plus Double Shredder, which is a lot of pressure also.
Yeah, something interesting to note is with double piloted Shredder, I think it's really unlikely actually that it has Core Chrono Elite in the build. I know it's been a card that's been favored by a lot of players lately, including Crane, who's regarded as one of the best Patron Warrior players in the world. He's a big fan of Core Chrono Elite, and I am as well.
JJ.
I just starts punching. Yeah, Super JJ, big fan of Core Chrono Elite as well. But it's couple piloted Shredders, they do provide a lot of value in this particular matchup.
Yeah. Firebat doing his best to make things awkward for Amnesiac with this Death Spite. And you're a little bit reluctant to use that second charge of Death Spite in this matchup just because it's such a good activator for patrons if you draw into them. And I think he is just going to hold on to it here. And seems like a smart play.
Yep, Slam pretty darn easy here.
He's going to have a pretty good battle rage as well, because he can damage himself by attacking into the pilot shredder. So he's going to be able to get 2 cards from it.
It depends on what drops out of that too. If we had 2-3 drops, we're looking at 3 card drops with battle rage. Yeah, 4-3. I mean, sometimes piloted shredder just is a 4-3 divine shield. You just don't know that it has divine shield.
Yeah.
It's got an invisible ability on it. You're like, what is it this time? It just hit you twice. You're like, it was Wind Fury.
Dang it. That divine shield again.
Why can't I attack him? One of these minions must have taunt. I can't see it though. Can't wait till that card's gone.
Yeah. It's going to make for a lot more dynamic matches. But, you know, I'm excited. This is sort of the last hurrah for Wild, I guess. I guess it's standard right now, but for Wild. This is sort of the last big tournament that we get to see. The last snapshot of this meta is this tournament. So, Standards comes out in 2 days. Whispers of the Old Gods comes out in 2 days.
Can't believe it's so close. It feels like it's been so long, and now that it's actually approaching, I can't believe that it's so close.
Yeah, I'm actually scared.
I think I just have Stockholm syndrome.
It's just been stuck in a tiny room with Wild for so long. Just like I've grown attached to it.
Yeah, Dr. Boom, pretty easy turn here. You know, it's honestly, this is kind of the Warrior matchup I wanted to see, because I do agree with you. When one player gets patrons and the other one doesn't, it's kind of an awkward matchup where it's just you burnt patrons on the board, and the propagation of those patrons leads to an extremely lopsided matchup. But here you kind of get like a back and forth. Like Dr. Boom is really good in this matchup, but it comes with a lot of concerns and potential liabilities alongside of it. So if there's a matchup where I think it's kind of fair, it's actually this one.
Mirror matchups in general are the most exciting when both players have great draws or when both players have terrible draws, and that's how it is with most mirror matchups. It's just like Patron is more volatile when there's no way that he can remove this without taking the damage.
Yeah, this is
Oh no, he can iterate his own Armor Smith. Yeah, this is a good way. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I think he can actually, TJ, but
no, he can't. Exactly what's happening in this matchup. Another Armor Smith. Oh yikes! So that Frothing Berserker. Wow. So that Frothing Berserker is going to stick. There's no way that he can remove this without taking the damage.
Yeah, this is
Oh no, he can iterate his own Armor Smith. Yeah, this is a good way. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I think he can actually, TJ, but
no, he can't.
I wasn't gonna just call you out like I did yesterday. I was like, let me make sure, because I actually haven't played through the whole turn. I was looking to see if we could do anything like crazy with the patron shenanigans.
I was turn. I looked at it, I glanced at it once, and I was like, oh, no, he can't. And I was looking at Amnesiac's hand to see if he was going to have lethal if his Frothing Berserker didn't die. But I didn't see the Inner Rage. I was also tunneling on the fact that Firebat wanted to make patrons next turn with that Inner Rage. But Amnesiac's going to go ahead and make patrons first. And this is a smart play just because he knows that Firebat has that Deathbite equipped and has cycled through a bit of his deck. So now this is going to make it tough for Firebat because he has to find some type of removal for that patron, and he does find it. And now he can clear the board and develop his own patrons behind it with an unstable ghoul.
Yeah, this is actually like a really big deal, this timing. You know, it's rare that in this matchup the first player who makes patrons gets punished for it. You know, prior to the Warsong Commander nerf, that was like almost always the case. The first player who made patrons was the one who got punished for it. In this situation, it is immensely rewarded to Firebat despite being the second one. So this is a really great turn.
In the past, your opponent having 7 minions on the board just made your Frothing Berserker absurd from hand. But alas, those days are behind us. And now, what's the plan for Amnesiac here? He's going to have to cycle, and you know, at this point, he just needs to find. I don't even know what he's looking for. He doesn't have Firebat low enough to start like pushing for pushing damage. He doesn't have a way to get through this unstable ghoul without giving patrons over. The only thing he can do is try and make it so that he gets as little patrons as possible from it by using the slam as removal, and hoping that Firebat doesn't have a way to make more the following turn.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. It's gonna be tough. The Grom in hand, this actually is kind of an interesting spot to use it, I imagine. I mean, giving your opponent sort of multiple threats to deal with at the same time. The Interrage might change things, though.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it does. I think you just use the Grom as to make a 10-6 here and start pushing the Grim Patron Sword's face. This actually gives Amnesia closer recovery unless Firebat Interrages. Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, this board is nearly impossible to deal with. You need multiple removals. You need like a slam, an execute, and a weapon hit. And right now he's got an execute. He does have a weapon hit. And he does have a Grom.
Yeah, he needed that second patron to not get made. So is going to like come close to cleaning this up. I mean, the threat on the cleanup is real right now. Even going to pay the extra life instead of keeping the Grom fresh. Yeah, and that will end the patron shenanigans finally for Firebat, and Amnesia's got a pretty significant amount of card advantage here.
So there is an interesting choice that Amnesiac made here that's important to point out. He actually attacked and killed the damaged patron, which is something that you don't see players do often. But what he's trying to do is reduce the effectiveness of Battle Rage. He knows that if there's an activator, he's going to make another patron anyway. But what he's trying to do is play around Battle Rage. So sometimes it's not the right play to take out the full health patron, unless you're playing a really board-centric matchup, which Amnesiac said, well, the board part is gone now. He just wants to avoid giving Firebat as many draws as possible.
Yeah, I think Amnesia actually is completely recovered here too. I mean, it's just going to be a matter of Frowling Berserker, Armorsmith, Grom runs into Frowling Berserker, Fireworks on the patron, and full recovery, I believe. I mean, you're gaining a lot of armor. He's actually going to forego the Armorsmith here, which I'm really surprised by. Which tells me unstable goal. Yeah. Oh, armor up and I'm not going to try to predict what's going on anymore because obviously I have no clue. Doesn't want to play anything because doesn't want to get Firebat any extra draws. I mean, at 10 life, I guess he is safe. He's already seen Grom. Firebat has no cards in hand. Like, what does he actually draw to kill his opponent here? I mean, does he need the armor at this point? The only thing I'm thinking of is it easier to lethal him if you play more minions? And I guess the answer is it doesn't matter because he's got 15 on board right now, plus 3 from the Fireworks. That's 18 Whirlwind from hand right now would make it 21. So Firebat at 21 can go to 23, but Amnesia can add the minions to it with the Whirlwind to increase the damage from that. So unless Firebat literally draws perfectly, he's actually just dead.
Yeah.
So that's all the things that went through Amnesia's mind that turn when he decided not to play anything other than just the Frowling Berserker.
Yeah. You might think, he got punished because Firebat drew a Death Spite, which if he played Unstable Ghoul, he wouldn't have been able to get through. But that Unstable Ghoul could have given his Acolyte Pin and Execute, and then he would have been in an even worse off position. So now we'll have to see. There's no more Grom left for Firebat, so that win condition is sort of out the window now. He's just got to try and remove what's on the board, and hopefully his own board sticks. But Amnesiac gets a Battle Rage off the top, so even more cards, double Armorsmith as well.
Finally, his own Grim Patron. I'm not even sure that matters at this point.
So now he has to decide: is it worth it to make a lot of patrons, but give him a lot of draws? And this Fireworks is going to go into the Acolyte of Pain, and he's just going to go for it. And I think that might just lock it up. I don't know if Firebat's going to be able to get out of this one alive.
Yeah, I mean, he's just clocked for 10 every single turn. And that's been the big difference here is that Amnesia has had time to just start hitting with this Grom. I mean, that's part of the thing that happens when you get into this very heavy initiate scenario is you run out of answers. Firebat down to his last line of defense. And that's going to do it. He cannot stop the Grim Patrons from Amnesia. And he's going to take this series 3-2 and move on to the top 8.
Yeah, very well played series, though. And, that last match was actually delivered. I called it a terrible matchup. But when both players don't have patrons early on, it gets to be really interesting in a dynamic matchup. So Glad to see that it came to that, and glad to see that it was just overall a really solid match and a 5-game set for these two players who are two of the strongest players in the tournament. So Amnesiac's going to move on to the round of 8. He's going to join Astrogation, Ultima, IV, Ray C, Dakota, and of course Super JJ, who we saw earlier. So still a pretty stacked top 8, I would say, and I was really impressed by that last match.
Yeah, I mean, just fantastic play on both sides, really tight play. Interesting to see the contrasting styles as well, with Amnesia kind of being a bit more conservative and looking for more swing turns, where Firebat kind of very often playing the best card in his hand turn after turn and looking for setups to drive the action. Very, very different styles to see, but a close 5-game set at the end. Looking forward to seeing more of Firebat, of course, this year as he continues to compete. And Amnesiac as well, strutting his stuff with this one. If he can put together back-to-back tournament wins, that will be very impressive.
And, one of those tournament wins being the America's Winter Championship. So it would be really impressive for him indeed. But we do have another great matchup coming up next. It is going to be Kalento versus Orange. So that's going to be an exciting one. Another Cloud9 versus Team Archon battle, which it's kind of cool to see. We've seen a couple of those throughout the weekend. So we're gonna have to go to a small break before we jump into that matchup. Still doing the Cyberpower Gamer Extreme 1000 PC giveaway. Also, still doing the Battlezone Beta app giveaways at the end of the day for the top players on that ladder. So make sure you go ahead and download that app if you are at PAX East and start playing on that ladder. But don't go anywhere, guys. Kalento versus Orange coming up next at the Hearthstone PAX East Major. Don't go anywhere.